Well, hello. I'm Brian Pinkney, a children's book illustrator and author, and I'd like to talk to you about this book, Bill Pickett, Rodeo-Ridin Cowboy. How I came up with the ideas, some little tips about my technique, and maybe a little anecdotal stories. You may know some of my work. I've illustrated over 35 books for children. I've won 2 Caldecott Honor Awards and about 4 Coretta Scott King Awards. I often work with my wife, who is Andrea Davis Pinkney, and she's actually the author on this book. So we've done a lot of books together that she's written and I've illustrated. The technique that I did for this book is called scratchboard. And children may know this technique. I did it when I was a kid, where we would color crayons on a sheet of paper, maybe cover it over with black crayon or black ink, and then we'd scratch into it with a toothpick. The way I do it is very similar. What I'm doing is I'm working with a whiteboard that's covered with black ink, and I buy it that way from the art supply store. Then with a very sharp knife called an X-Acto blade or a scratchboard nib, I scratch the drawing in. So now it's black and white, but all the lines are in white. So what I do then is I keep scratching away all the little details. And when I get something that looks nice, then I'll go back in with oil paint or oil pastels and just rub it over the black and the white areas, and then wipe it away from the black areas with a rag, and the color just stays in the cracks. And then I can paint back over that again with color. When my wife and I decided to do this book, Bill Pickett, we knew we wanted to do a book about a black cowboy, but we weren't sure what we were going to do. And on a trip to Denver, Colorado, we went to the Black Cowboy Museum. And while we were there, we learned about all these great black cowboys. And at the time, we didn't realize that 1/3 of the cowboys that settled the West were African American. And we wanted to show that lifestyle. So we decided Bill Pickett because he was very charismatic. He would go to rodeo shows, and one of the things that made him famous is he invented this technique called bulldogging. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that through the book. When he was a little boy, his father was a cowboy, his uncles were cowboys, and they traveled west. Like a lot of the cowboys came from the east and traveled west. He would hear stories that his father would tell and his uncles would tell about what it was like riding horses and settling the West, and he would watch them. And one of the things that he noticed one day was a bulldog. And if you don't know a bulldog, we know what bulldogs are, what they look like, but bulldogs actually could be any kind of dog. And the reason why they were called bulldogs is that whenever one of the steers would run into the bush, the cowboys would send a dog in, and the dog would go in and bite it on the lip, because the lips were very sensitive, and pull it out. Now, I remember hearing this when I first read it. I thought, that's really strange, biting it. But I thought, it's kind of like eating hamburger, I guess, a little rare. So the scene, this particular piece, which is at the Mazza collection, is the scene where young Bill decides to try it himself. Now, I actually didn't show the scene right when he was biting him, because I wanted to save that till later. For research, I had to look at a lot of pictures of cowboys, and I had to figure out the way they would dress and things like that. And I loved books about sculptures from the West, where they would show cowboys on top of bucking broncos. And I can remember when I was a little boy, I had gone out west with my parents, and we would go to these museums, and I would look at all these great paintings and sculptures, and I remembered that feeling of what it was like to be a cowboy. And I live in Brooklyn, New York, where we don't have many cattle or horses, but I decided that I actually wanted to model for Bill Pickett. So what I did was, we had a couch, and while Andrea was photographing me, I would jump off the couch like I was about to jump on a steer. Now, I actually had a carpet down so I didn't hurt myself, but that's how I got this angle here. And this is the famous scene that I like also, where I actually show Bill Pickett biting the lip of the steer, and he would throw his hands back and fall down, and that's how he would pin the steer to the ground. And he would do this in rodeo shows. So, that's my book and my artwork. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.